For any master strategist or anyone looking to have any success or wisdom in their life, you need to be able to think. You need to be able to control yourself. You need to be rational. Any general knows that if he cannot command his own army, he lies at the feet of his prepared enemy. And this is the situation many are facing today. We lie at the feet of the prepared world, and the world is prepared to seep irrationality into our bones, to take control of our thoughts and our minds, and to use us for their benefit. We must overcome our own tendencies to be irrational and learn to be rational so that we can thwart any attempt someone makes to control us. Today, we are going to be looking at the three-step process outlined by Robert Greene in The Laws of Human Nature. This three-step process is for overcoming our irrationality and being more rational in the right situations. Now, a little backdrop on how Robert Greene wrote this book is that he spent over 5 years reading over 300 books just to write this book. He wrote 18 different laws of human nature, and we are going to go through them all on this channel. So check those out if you haven't already. Now, step 1 for overcoming our irrationality is to recognize our biases. We're going to go into a lot of detail on this one. Step 2 is to beware the inflaming factors. Number 3, develop strategies towards bringing out the rational self. So step 1, recognize the biases. I'm going to go through a list of biases, and you can recognize them in your own life. Whether you want to write this down or you just want to commit this to memory, watch for these in yourself and watch for them in others. The first of these is the confirmation bias. This one is wildly rampant in my own life, I'll just admit it. When I first read this, I saw myself all over the pages. Here's what goes on in the confirmation bias. The idea is, I think what I want to think because of my emotion, and then I find rational reasons for why I've done it so I can feel rational. So an idea for this might be a job maneuver. I move to a different job, and then I find a reason for it. I find some reasonable answer for why I would do such a thing, but when I actually did it, it was because of emotion. The second of these is conviction bias. I believe this so strongly it has to be true. This one happens more often than you would think. Often it is something we learned at a very young age that we refuse to let go of, or something that we have convinced ourselves of so many times and told so many people that we believe this, we can't let go of that. It's just become part of who we are. It's so strong in our minds that nothing will ever change our ways. Number 3, the appearance bias. I understand the way people are. I see them for who they are. This one is completely bogus, and I love this from Robert Greene. We don't understand people as much as we think we do. People are far more complex and mysterious and not as genuine as most people probably think. Although it may completely be the case that you know some people very well, often you do not know many people well at all. The fourth, the group bias. This is the idea that my ideas come from myself. I don't follow the crowd. I know what I'm doing because I've thought about it. Nobody can change my mind, unless I want them to. This idea is pretty hypomanic. Hypomanics deal with this a lot. People that are very grandiose and confident and hard workers. People like to think that their ideas are their own. Often, it's the people you hang out with, the people you listen to, the things you've heard. This is where all of your beliefs come from. We need to recognize when we are not being honest with ourselves and our ideas did not come from ourselves. Number 5, the blame bias. This is simply the idea that I learn from my mistakes and my failures. When I fail, I'm not going to repeat it again. I know what I've done. I see my mistake and I learn. Most people simply don't learn from their mistakes. This is why you see patterns of failures in people's lives. And anyone that's able to break these patterns, these are the successful people. And that's why there's so few of them. We need to be honest when we are not learning from our mistakes and find the reason why we are not. The superiority bias. This goes along with the grandiosity we see in hypomanics. I'm different. I'm more talented. I'm special. I'm smarter than everyone else. Nobody could do things like I do them. This one is dangerous on a multiple level of reasons. You won't be able to find help from other people, and people won't want your help. You need to watch for the superiority bias In conclusion of these 6 biases, here is what I would recommend for step 1 of this process of overcoming our irrationality. Simply, I want you to find one bias a week, a day if you're not busy, and identify it. The more you can see what's going on, the more rational you become. When I see the chessboard, I can start thinking of what moves to make. But when it's fog and I can't see what's going on, I don't know where my pieces are, I don't know where the other pieces are, I can't make a move. So you have to be able to see the chessboard to start making your moves. And seeing the chessboard here is simply identifying the biases in real life. This is a simple exercise and does not take much work. It does, however, require a change, and change is hard, so I understand if this becomes difficult. But moving on to step 2, beware the inflaming factors. Now, what does the step beware the inflaming factors mean? What this means is that you have to be very careful of high-grade emotion. When you're pounding away, you want to hit the wall, you want to hit somebody, you want to go crazy, or you're depressed, or you're anxious. All of these high-grade emotions that permeate your mind and your actions and your everyday thoughts, these have got to go, and you've got to watch out for them. You're not going to be able to get rid of them. Nobody can just remove emotions from their life, and I don't think we would want to. But you have to become aware of them and be cautious. There are a bunch of triggers for these high-grade emotions, and what Robert Greene says is to simply watch for these. And like before, if you can watch and see the moves on the chessboard, you can know what's coming and you can prepare for it. So let's look over some of these triggers. The first of these triggers are trigger points from early childhood. This is the idea that you learned something, whether it was through pain or great ecstasy. Something from childhood was learned improperly, and you use the past to interpret the present. You cannot rely on such ridiculous notions, or maybe even not ridiculous notions, but you have to see the present for what it is and not always interpret it through the past. And one way that we do this that brings about high-grade emotion is through points from early childhood. So Robert Greene says to identify these and watch for them to make sure they are not going to interfere with your strategy. The number 2 factor for inflaming emotion is sudden gains or losses. This one blew me away, honestly. I thought this was something that was the opposite of the case. I thought if you have a big win, you've learned a great deal because you'll get all this great emotion, you'll feel good, and that'll make a pathway in your brain that tells you to always do this hard thing that you just did so that you'll always get this feeling. No, Robert Greene says, listen, when you take a sudden hit or a big win, you need to take a step back and see it for what it is. Often there's luck involved in big wins, and most people won't admit this. This is how we can avoid the superiority bias. When things go wrong, we can be more optimistic and say, listen, it went wrong because of this, this, this. I still did this, this, and this right. I'm getting closer. When things go really well, we say, whoa, I did well, but I still could have worked on this, this, this. What he's saying here is that we need to take it not as something that didn't happen at all. It's not like we didn't just face a big loss or a big win. What we need to do is just watch and be more rational about how we deal with this emotion. We need to not run away with ourselves and become grandiose in our schemes and ideas because we've had a small win. And we also need to not give up when we've taken a loss. The third of these is rising pressure, and this is something I'm sure all of us feel. Stress. Everybody gets it. You gotta go to work, you gotta do this, you gotta figure out this, you have to read this book, you have to listen to somebody explain it. You have to do something, and it's stressful. Nobody really, aside from hobbies and maybe some work, nobody really wants to do most of what they do, and this can cause stress, especially when we have to. We have to be aware of how much stress we can actually handle, because while some will say, oh, you can handle as much as you can, and you probably can, you have to be careful, because if you're not strategic about how you build up your stress tolerance and get more and more and more and more so you can do more and more and more, if you're not strategic about this, it's over. There are ways that you can do anything you want, really. but you have to be very strategic about doing them. Instead of just full-blown saying, I can do it. No, you can't. You need to be strategic, and then you can do it. The fifth of these are inflaming individuals, or people that always get people going. These people are pretty easy to spot, but honestly, because of how inflaming they are, we don't like to spot them. People like this are, the big politicians. You either love them or you hate them. You see these people on a daily basis. You either love them or you hate them. They're always making you feel one crazy way or another. You don't ever know if you should take their side or not because it probably leads to something crazy. These people are pretty crazy, and he says to watch out for these people because nobody can remain unbiased towards them. So there'll usually be a lot of conflict and just friction between people around this person, and this can lead to that inflamed emotion that we probably want to avoid for this time being. The fifth of these is the group effect, nearly the same as the group bias. But the idea is that when people's emotions are radicalized around you, you will follow the same path. Once again, it is watching the group dynamic. Just keep your eye on it. That is absolutely not have to be the first thought of your mind, but taking a moment to identify a few times where someone in a group has become emotionally radicalized and it has affected the entire group, just identify that. See when it happens so you can see when it happens again and you can know how to best move the piece. Now, Robert Greene ends step 2 with this quote. Rationality is to be something acquired by individuals, not by mass movements or technological process. Feeling superior and beyond, it is a sure sign that the irrational is at work. Now that we've seen a few ways to look at the irrationality around us and how simply looking at it will help us become more rational, let's do what Robert Greene says and take step 3 and bring out our rational mind so that we can really become rational. Beginning step 3, how to develop strategies for bringing out your rational side, Robert Greene takes note of 2 things which I think are great encouragement. Number 1 is that if we look at history, we see a lot of people that have been able to bring out their rational side, and we see them do incredible things because of it. You see people, Abraham Lincoln, Napoleon Bonaparte, George Washington, all these people were able to bring out their rational side, and they did an excellent job with that rational side. So not only is it possible, but you will do great things if you are able to accomplish this. So the second thing he takes note of is that we all have a little bit of this inside us, and we can already see it. So we already have hope. What we see here is what he calls the maker's mindset. This is the idea that when you get locked in, you're in that zone. You have a task to do, probably with a deadline, and you lock in and you get it done. We've all experienced this, I'm sure, at one point. I've sure experienced it a lot. You get locked in, and what he's saying here is, listen, that's your rational side. And if you can get to that 90% of the time, you're going places. And boy, do I agree. So, the first of these strategies, which we're to start developing in order to bring out our rationality, is to know ourselves thoroughly. And this is really a reiteration of the first 2 steps. What it's simply saying is realize what emotions are at play, realize when others are under emotions, realize how they can infect you with emotions. Look at yourself, look at your emotions, simply take a look. The more you can take a look at it, the more you can learn how to move the pieces so that things work out. Take a look at the chessboard and make your move, is what he's saying. Number 2 is to examine your emotions to the root. This is saying, why do I make this move when I'm playing with my emotions? This is just saying the same thing as step 2. When we have high-grade emotion, take a step back, take a look. Is it from your childhood? Is it because you had some sudden success, some sudden loss? Why are you so crazy? Take a look at your strong emotion and see what's going on. Number 3 is to increase your reaction time, but not in the way we would think. He's not saying get faster. He's saying get slower when you have the time. Abraham Lincoln is the perfect example of this, and he's famous for it. What he would do is, when he was upset with someone, he would write a letter with all of his frustration in it, but he would never send it. So he would play out his emotion as wanted, but he wouldn't actually take the action that emotion wanted to before he had cooled off. So he would give himself time to vent his anger and his rage and his frustration, and then he would take a look and see what was going on and see if that's actually what he wanted to do. A brilliant method for bringing out your rational side. I have to say, this is phenomenal. If you can take the time, take your time. Number 4, accept people as facts. I don't think he really labeled this correctly, because what he's really trying to say, and what I really think he should be saying if he's not, is what Dale Carnegie says. See things that people do from their own perspective. So when we see somebody do something that we say, oh, that's so irrational. Why would you ever do that? That is ridiculous. You're this, you're that. Take a look from their perspective before you make any rash decisions or judgments. Taking things from other people's perspective is a key to a success, for sure. So if we can do that, we can be much more rational when we deal with people, and we won't react emotionally, at least not immediately, or at least act on those emotions. Now, the second to last of these is to find the optimal balance of thinking and emotion. And he gives a perfect analogy here. You are to your emotions as a rider is to his horse. So just as if a rider's not controlling a horse, the horse is going to go get water at 2 a.m. and then go run at 6 a.m. for 40 miles the wrong way, get completely lost. If you're not controlling your horse, if you're not taking a look at the reins, picking them up, choosing when to guide, you're lost. But if you can take control of the reins, you're going places fast. Now, our final strategy to develop for developing our rationality is really saying, give it a try. What it says is to love the rational, but I think this only comes through practice, and this is exactly what Robert Greene would say. Once you start practicing, it's going to initially suck. Okay, nobody wants to look at people from their own perspective. It's much easier to take it how we see it. Nobody wants to look at their own emotions and say, why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? Oh, why do I do this? Oh, why do I feel this way? No, we just want to live. We don't want to take the time. But listen, here's what he's saying. When you start taking the time, you're going to start seeing results. And when you start seeing results, you're going to start to like being rational. And when you start like being rational, that's when that horse is taking off, bro. That thing's turning into a jet plane and you're across the world. That's how all the great people did it. That's how you can do it too. Learn to love being rational. And the way you learn to love being rational is by forcing yourself to do it. And I wish you the best of luck in that. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for entertaining my voice. We will continue to instruct our minds. And of course, don't forget, it's your move.